What could be worse than death itself in the shadow of the Parthenon, beneath the marble columns that celebrated Athenian civilization? A question that would haunt humanity for millennia found its most terrifying answer. Picture ancient Athens in 399 BBC. The same year, Socrates would drink his hemlock. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Agri as crowds begin to gather their faces, a mixture of morbid curiosity and righteous anger. But this is not an ordinary. What awaits is something far more sinister than the swift release of death. It is the complete obliteration of a human soul. The ancient Greeks had a word for it. Atimia, the total destruction of honor, the systematic picture of one's very existence from society. While other civilizations killed their criminals, the Greeks perfected something far more cruel. They learned to weaponize shame itself, turning it into the ultimate punishment for women in this nadia of human degradation, a punishment so severe that even hardened executioners would struggle to carry it out. The victim would not simply die, she would be unmade, unravel thread by thread, until nothing remained but a cautionary tale whispered in the shadows. Before we go further into this dark chapter of history, consider subscribing to History Remains. Your support helps us bring more of these untold. Executioners turn away as the machinery of ancient justice prepared to demonstrate that they were indeed fates far worse than death. To understand the depths of marble halls of Athenian democracy, where philosophers debated the nature of justice and citizens voted on matters of state, women in ancient Greece were not people in the eyes of the law. They were property. From birth to death, they passed from father to husband to son, never holding legal, singing their own right. They could not speak in court, could not own property, could not even leave their homes without male permission. The concept of honor or time was the foundation of Greek social order, but it was honor that belonged exclusively. Men, women could only reflect the honor of their male guardians, and when they failed in this role, they faced consequences that went far beyond simple punishment. The Greeks understood shame or shows as a cosmic force to be. Change was not merely to be embarrassed, it was to be polluted, to carry a spiritual contamination called miasma that could infect entire communities. This pollution was so dangerous that elaborate purification rituals were required too. The religious significance of shame permitted every aspect of Greek life, making it a weapon more powerful than any sword-class distinctions, further complicated. Foreign resident, who in turn was treated differently from a slave. Yet all women, regardless of status, shared the vulnerability of their gender in a society that viewed female transgress as particularly dangerous to the social order. Public spectacle was crucial to maintaining this hierarchy. Punishments were not hidden away in dungeons, but displayed prominently for all to see, serving as both entertainment and education for the masses. These beliefs would create the perfect storm for the most degrading punishment imaginable, one that would strip away not just life, but identity itself in a society where women covered themselves from head to toe, where even pimping a woman's ankle could cause scandal. Public nudity represented the ultimate violation of feminine dignity. The Greeks had created a paradox so perfect in its cruelty that it revealed the true depths of their misogyny. Our male nudity was celebrated in gymnasiums and athletic competitions as the pinnacle of human beauty and achievement. Female nudity was criminalized, weaponized, and transformed into the cornerstone of the most humiliating punishment ever devised. The word itself sounds like a death sentence whispered in the wind. This was not simply an execution. It was a ritual of complete degradation that could last for days. The process began with the victim, or a prominent crossroads, where the maximum number of citizens would witness her shame. There, before the jeering crowd, she would be stripped of every piece of clothing, every thread that preserved even a shred of dignity. But the removal of clothing was only the beginning. The naked woman would then be bound to wooden planks or wheels, Some historical accounts from Plutarch describe elaborate contraptions designed specifically to maximize both physical discomfort and public visibility. The victim was positioned so that every part of her body was exposed to the elements and to the gaze of anyone who passed by. She was denied food. The psychological torture was perhaps even more devastating than the physical suffering. The crowd was not merely permitted to watch, they were encouraged to. Stones and refuse at the helpless woman. Children were brought to witness the spectacle, normalizing this extreme violence and ensuring that the lesson would be passed to the next generation. The victim became a living example of what happened to women who dared to transgress the boundaries of acceptable behavior. The religious dimension added another layer of horror to this punishment. Those who died through a pot and loaves, would they need proper burial rites, meaning their souls would wander restlessly for eternity, unable to find peace in the afterlife. This spiritual punishment extended the torture beyond death itself, condemning the victim to an patriarchal society. The shame was amplified beyond measure. On a man might face a pot and peninsula for political crimes, for treason. A woman could face this fate for adultery, poisoning, any number of offenses that challenged male authority. The very gender that society demanded be modest and hidden was forced into the most public and exposed death imaginable. At the physical torture was only the beginning of a process. Who escaped this fate through a dramatic courtroom revelation, but from the forgotten women whose names were deliberately wiped from history, while France's beauty saved her when her defender dramatically revealed her naked form to the jury, arguing that such perfection could not be guilty of impiety. Countless other women were not so fortunate. In the fragmentary records from Theban archives, we find the case of a woman, her name scratched out so thoroughly that even modern scholars cannot decipher it, accused of poisoning her husband's business rival, a papyrus. Evidence from Oxford Hinches provides chilling details of her final days, recorded with the colder fish sea of bureaucratic procedure. The accusation came at dawn, delivered by her own brother-in-law in the presence of the local magistrate. As was customary, she was given no opportunity to defend herself. Women had no legal voice in ancient Greece. The trial, if it could be called, that consisted of male relatives and community leaders examining the evidence and pronouncing judgment. The sentence was delivered with ceremonial gravity: death by a pot, and peninsulas to serve as an example to all women who might consider such treachery. The walk to the execution site became a procession of shame forced to traverse the busiest streets of the spitting, all participating in the ritual destruction of a human being, children. Symphony of cruelty that would have made the Furies themselves. Rico Xenophon, in his meticulous historical accounts, describes how such processions became social events, with vendors selling food and drink to spectators who made a day of watching another human being's destruction. The intersection of gender, class, and justice created a perfect storm of oppression. This woman's fate was sealed not just by her alleged crime, but by her inability as a woman to mount any legal defense. The religious implications extended far beyond the individual victim. Her family's lineage was considered contaminated by her crime, and punishment would carry the stain of their mother's shame throughout their lives, finding themselves barred from certain professions, religious ceremonies, and social circles. The miasma of her punishment spread like a contemporary sources suggest that the psychological toll on witnesses was also significant. Yet this was considered a feature, not a flaw, of the punishment. The trauma of watching extreme degradation was intended to create lasting memories that would deter future transgressions. The spectacle served as a form of mass psychological conditioning, reinforcing social hierarchies through shared participation in. A story reveals the true horror of systematic dehumanization, how an entire civilization could convince itself that such cruelty was not only justified but necessary for social order. Transformation of execution into entertainment revealed perhaps the most disturbing aspect of a pot and penis. Most, how efficiently ancient Greek society monetized human suffering. These were not spontaneous outbursts of mob violence, but carefully orchestrated performances designed to maximize both social control and and economic profit. The amphitheater of shame was a carefully chosen stage, selected for its capacity to accommodate crowds and its symbolic significance within the community. Degradation execution sites were typically positioned at major crossroads, busy market squares, or prominent public spaces where the maximum number of citizens would witness the pun. Archaeological evidence from excavations in Athens and Sparta reveals specialized areas that may have been specifically designed for public executions, complete with raised platforms to ensure good visibility for spectators. The economics were as brutal as they were efficient. Vendors set up stalls around execution sites, selling food, drink, and small objects that spectators could throw at the condemned. Local magistrates collected fees from these vendors, authorities, a financial incentive to conduct more public executions. The wheels of commerce turned ever faster when lubricated with human blood and tears participation rituals. Ordinary citizens, interactive collaborators in the destruction of human life, throwing stones or refuse at the condemned, was not merely permitted, it was encouraged as a civic duty. Citizens who participated in enthusiastically showed mercy were viewed with suspicion. The social pressure to participate created a culture of normalized violence that permeated every level of society. Your most disturbing was the role assigned to children. In the spectacles, young boys and girls were brought to witness executions as part of their education, learning through direct observation what happened to those who challenged social. These experiences served as powerful psychological conditioning, creating generations of adults who viewed extreme violence as normal and necessary. The children often received small treats or rewards for attending, creating positive associations with witnessing human suffering. The comparison with other Greek punishments reveals the unique cruelty of a pot and penis. Most catapults or ritual drowning was swift and private, denying the victim the prolonged agony of. Play humiliation, the pharmakon or scapegoat ritual, while involving public participation, typically ended quickly with the victim's exile or death. Only a pot and penis smells combined. Maximum physical suffering with maximum official degradation, creating a punishment specifically designed to destroy both body and soul. Literary references in the works of Sophocles and Euripides suggest that even ancient audiences found these punishments disturbing. If can you to attend and participate. The tragic playwrights use the horror of public execution as a dramatic device, knowing that their audiences would recognize and respond to the terror it represented. This cultural acknowledgement of the punishment. The psychological impact on society was profound and lasting. Communities that regularly practiced a pot and peninsulas developed a collective callous toward human suffering that extended into other areas of life. The normalization of extreme violence against women reinforced gender hierarchies and legitimized domestic abuse, creating cycles of cruelty. When the machinery of obliteration truly revealed its full power, death for most humans throughout history has marked the end of earthly suffering and the beginning of whatever lies beyond. But for victims of a pot and peninsula's death was merely the transition from one form of torture to another. The ancient Greeks had perfected a system of post-mortem punishment so thorough that it's sought to erase. The systematic erasure from all records began even before the victim had drawn their final breath. Babes would work methodically through official documents, scratching out names with such thoroughness that modern archaeologists struggle to decipher them. The victim's name was chiseled from public monuments, removed from family genealogies, eliminated from religious records. It was as if they had never existed at all. The consequences for surviving family members were devastating, and deliberate children found their inheritance rights stripped away, their citizenship questioned, play legitimacy as members of society called into doubt the miasma of their mothers. Crime and punishment clung to them like a spiritual plague, following them through every aspect of their lives. Marriage prospects evaporated. Professional closed their doors permanently. Burial prohibitions added another layer of cruelty to this systematic destruction. The victim's body was left exposed to scavengers. The human dignity of proper interpretation internment in Greek religious belief. This condemned the soul to wander restlessly for eternity, unable to find peace in the afterlife. The horror of this spiritual punishment extended the torture infinitely beyond the bound ways of mortal existence. Property confiscation served both practical and symbolic purposes. The victim's possessions were seized and redistributed among male relatives or sold to benefit the community treasury. This economic aspect of the punishment ensured that the material traces of the person's existence was scattered to the winds, making reconstruction of their life nearly impossible for future generations. Religious purification. Elaborate ceremonies to cleanse the contamination left by the victim's presence. Sacred spaces where the condemned and worshipped were richly purified, their names removed from religious rosters, their offerings destroyed or distributed. Even the gods, it seemed, were encouraged to forget that such a person had ever lived. The process of collective amnesia was perhaps the most chilling aspect of this post-mortem torture. Communities actively worked to forget the victim, training themselves to avoid mention of the person's name or deeds. This social amnesia was enforced through informal sanctions. Those who spoke of the condemned risk being associated with their pollution and facing social consequences. What is themselves archaeological evidence continues to reveal the thoroughness of these erasure practices. Inscriptions discovered in recent decades show names that have been carefully chiseled out, replaced with curse formulas, or left as intentional blanks. The physical evidence of this systematic destruction provides haunting testimony to the lengths ancient Greeks would go to unmake a human being. The comparison with Roman practices reveals the unique Greek contribution to the art of human. They typically reserved it for political enemies and applied it after death. The Greeks integrated erasure into the punishment itself, making the victim witness their obliteration from history. The long-term psychological impact on surviving family members created ripple effects that could last for generations. Children who witnessed their mother's erasure from existence developed complex trauma responses, often becoming either extremely compliant citizens or conversely harboring deep resentments that could explode into violence. Years or decades later, the economic implications for the police were significant but rarely discussed in ancient sources. The labor lost through these executions, the families destroyed, the social disruption caused by public spectacles. All of these factors contributed to hidden costs that weakened communities, even as they claim to strengthen. Greek society for generations, creating patterns of violence and oppression that would influence Western civilization for millennia to come. As we stand in the ruins of ancient marble of a civilization that gave the world democracy and philosophy, we are confronted with an uncomfortable truth about human nature. The same culture that produced Socrates and Plato, cruelty that would make modern torturers pause in admiration. The influence of these practices extended far beyond the borders of ancient Greece. Roman legal traditions absorbed and adapted Greek concepts of public shaming and post-mortem punishment. Medieval European legal systems incorporated elements of ritual humiliation that can be traced directly back to Greek precedents even today. Play in our age of social media and instant global communication, we see echoes of ancient apart and peninsulas in the phenomenon of online public shaming, where individuals can be systematically destroyed and erased from digital exist. With frightening efficiency, archaeological discoveries continue to reveal new evidence of these practices, forcing us to confront the reality that human cruelty has remained remarkably consistent across cultures and millennia. Recent excavations in Athens have uncovered what appear to be specialized execution sites, complete with drainage systems designed to handle the bodily fluids of the condemned and viewing areas, arranged for maximum spectator comfort. What these ancient practices reveal about human nature is perhaps more disturbing than the practices themselves. They demonstrate our capacity for collective self-deception, go to rationalize extreme cruelty as moral necessity, and our willingness to participate in the destruction of fellow human beings when given social permission to do so. The Greek concept of miasma, spiritual pollution, provided the perfect justification for treating certain individuals as less than human, contaminated beings whose destruction was not only acceptable but necessary for community health. The importance of remembering these dark chapters of human history. Prejudice and social pressure combined to override our basic humanity. They remind us that civilization is a thin veneer that can be stripped away with terrifying, revealing the savage impulses that lurk beneath our rational, ordered societies. The systematic oppression of women revealed in these ancient practices continues to resonate in modern discussions of gender equality. Injustice, the Greek concept of women as property rather than people, the legal framework that Denny, the voice or agency, the religious beliefs that made them scapegoats for societal problems. All of these elements assist in various. Is the realization that the technology of human destruction has evolved while the fundamental impulses remain unchanged. We have become more efficient at erasing people from existence, more sophisticated in our methods of public shaming, more subtle in our techniques of social control. The Greeks used wooden planks and public squares. We use algorithms and digital platforms. The methods have changed. The underlying cruelty remains depressingly constant in our age of social media and public judgment, where careers can be destroyed with a single tweet and lives can be ruined by viral videos. We must ask ourselves a difficult question: truly evolved beyond these ancient impulses to destroy those who transgress our moral boundaries, or we simply found new ways to practice the same fundamental cruelties that turned the streets of Athens into theaters of human degradation?